Hello and welcome back to the Perception Podcast, where we just see things a little bit differently. In this episode, I'm going to be talking to mum, author, SEND advisor, and even MBE, and one of my mum's best friends for a long time. I've known her since I was 6, Yvonne Newbold. Now, this is my first time recording these episodes actually visually, so if you do enjoy this format like better than the normal spinning eye recording audio thing, just let me know. I did try to do this a while back, but it didn't work out for various reasons, so yeah, just let me know in the comments. But apart from that, I really hope you enjoy this episode. It's definitely one of the more informative ones. Yvonne's an absolute legend. She's one of my favourite people in the world. And yeah, I just hope you enjoy. So Yvonne, if you just wanted to tell us a bit about yourself and kind of what you do for your job and stuff like that.
Lovely. Thank you, Dan. My name's Yvonne Newbold, and I work with families of children and young people who have a disability or an additional need of some sort. And the vast majority of my work is with parents of those children who also have particularly difficult or dangerous behaviour. It's incredibly common when a child has got particularly a neurodevelopmental diagnosis, such as being autistic or having ADHD or having a learning disability, that anxiety can run incredibly high. And when children and young people have very high levels of anxiety, that can detrimentally impact on how they behave. And in some cases, it can make children become very frightened, very scared, lash out at their family members or at other children or teachers at school. And of course, everybody looks at those children and thinks, what horrible children, aren't they badly behaved? Whereas my role is really to help not just parents, but also the professionals who work with this group of children, to help them to see that actually what they're looking at is a very frightened child or young person who's behaving like this because they're trying to protect themselves and they're trying desperately hard to feel safe again. And once people can start to see things through a different lens, then there are dozens and dozens of strategies that we can put in place that can help families to really support their children to move beyond their violent times. And of course, that means that those children have a much better chance of leading very promising, hopeful and productive adult lives as well. Mm. So, I think I've got the best job in the world, but I fell into it. It happened by accident. I was one of the parents in this community. I have a son called Toby, who was born with a condition that's so incredibly rare. He's the only person in the world who has it. And it made him so desperately ill that for nearly all of his first 6-7 years, he was so very ill that we didn't think he was going to make it. We nearly lost him more times than I can remember. And he and I spent about 3/4 of his first 6-7 years living in hospitals, him normally in intensive care, fighting for his life, me as a resident parent, just willing him to keep on taking that next breath. He did survive. He's doing incredibly well. He's 27. But as his health began to improve, his behaviour went off the scale. And basically, he had a fabulous team around him, and I talked to everybody, and nobody knew what to do. There weren't any services, or at least there weren't anywhere near enough services. It took us 10 years to be able to get the help that Toby so badly needed. So I just feel that if I can help parents so that nobody has to wait that long ever again, then that's what I do.
While it's good to I don't want to say fond of, but like use services and other people for help, I do think the main help and kind of progress is made within the family. And I think the best support system for especially kids with additional needs, or whatever you want to call it, is with the family. And I think that's who they respond best to in most occasions, most times. So I think, yeah, it's definitely the best way to go about it.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that's what tends to happen. People, when your child starts lashing out and hurting other members of the family, it can become terrifying. It can become really frightening, very intense. And people always think that they're probably big kids of, 16, 17, great big strapping teenagers. But I know violent little girls of 3, 4, 5 years old, really cute little, gorgeous looking, tiny children who just become so incredibly overwhelmed with these great big emotions that they can't handle themselves, that they lash out. And the thing is, even if you get the very, very best service, even if that service did exist somewhere and your family was lucky enough to be referred to them, at best, that child will get an hour with that therapist, which means there'll be 167 hours a week with mum and dad.
Definitely.
So one of the things that really breaks my heart, and I do a lot of work to sort of counter, is that we're in a situation where families so often get very badly blamed for a child's behaviour. Often services, and it's not the people in the services' fault because there's so little training in behaviour-related, anxiety-led, difficult and dangerous ways to behave. There's so little training out there for professionals. So in our society, we do tend to blame parents for having badly behaved children. But the thing is, these children are not badly behaved in the conventional way. These children are behaving as they do because they are so incredibly distressed and incredibly frightened and incredibly anxious. So it's it's coming from a completely different place.
Yeah.
Parents get blamed, and when parents get blamed, they don't feel good about themselves. They basically absorb it, they start to believe it, and it can crush parents and break parents as much as trying to deal with their children's behaviour does. And the awful thing when that happens is that once a parent starts to believe that it's only their fault, and if they've been told it by everybody, friends, family, neighbours, school, health, the GP, everybody, once they start to believe it themselves, then it's only a very small step from there to actually being able to accept the violence and thinking that they deserve it. And the thing is, what we should be doing is everything possible to strengthen the family unit, not to bring it down, not to be destroying it, as is happening now. Cerebra, the charity, did a fantastic report that came out a couple of weeks ago, which looks at how parental blame has become institutionalised throughout UK services. I don't know if you've seen it, but I can send you a copy and maybe we can attach it.
We'll definitely want to read that, yeah.
You're right. We can also attach it perhaps to the podcast when it goes out. So, but basically, blaming parents is completely wrong. It's completely unfair. But if we look at it from a therapeutic point of view towards the child, it's not helping the child. How can it be helping the child to make the parents feel that they're hopeless, useless, and that they're rubbish parents?
Yeah.
It doesn't. You will be a much better parent if you feel good about yourself and you feel confident. So a large part of my role is to try and build parents up and to get them back on track and believing in themselves, really, because this group of parents, They aren't just ordinary parents. These parents are amazing. These parents are ninjas. They're the ninja parents because basically they're dealing with advanced parenting situations every single day of their lives. These are the parents who are coping with situations to keep brothers and sisters safe and uninjured. They're on constant hyper alert the whole time. They're waiting for the next crisis to happen. They're holding their breath the whole time. They're dealing with situations that would leave it's beyond the imagination of most families. And yet, everybody else thinks that we're the rubbish parents. Hey, we're not. We're the ninjas. Would you agree with that?
Completely, 100%. I think a lot of the time, professionals are people that don't experience it firsthand. Forget that it's not a case of bad kid, bad parent. It's a case of a journey between the two, that the parent becomes kind of the kid's main support system.
Yeah.
And it's, if you don't allow them to have that journey together and kind of support each other and kind of help each other along that way, then you're just dismantling it from the outset, and you're just going to create a worse environment for everybody involved. It's like, it's stupid from my perspective anyway.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer, isn't it, really? It's just, yeah, absolutely.
And what you were saying a minute ago as well, I know from first hand as well, with obviously especially harder experiences in the past, with my mum not feeling the best and feeling like she was failing and not being a great parent and stuff like that, that actually makes the child like feel like a burden, like they're causing it. So
Yes.
as I said, for both people, and especially as I'm getting older, dealing with like more maybe like depression side of things and all sorts, it's not a sustainable way of living in any sense.
That's really interesting hearing you say that. And that's very honest as well, Dan, because basically, so what you're saying is that if I was a professional and I make a mum feel rubbish, I'm probably also making her child feel like they're rubbish too.
Yeah.
That's quite profound. That's quite amazing.
Didn't mean it to.
No, but this is why it's so important that people like us who've actually been there and lived it are part of the discussion, the debate, because you can't learn these sort of things out of a book, and don't get me wrong, there are some professionals who are fantastic and go way beyond the extra mile. And there are some who have been in Toby's life that I will always just be so incredibly grateful. Words can't convey how grateful. But sadly, a lot of professionals sometimes do more harm than good, and that's not their fault. Because if nobody's investing in the training to help them understand why this behaviour isn't just being naughty and it's actually deep distress and anxiety, then they're doing their best. They can only pass on the information that they understand and that they know. And if nobody's told them, then that's not going to happen. But I don't ever think there's any excuse to blame parents and I see it. I mean, I run a private Facebook group for parents of children who have got either a disability or an additional need and who are also physically violent towards other people. And the amount of posts that I see and comments of where parents have been blamed. And I actually did a survey a few weeks ago, and I just said, have you ever been felt blamed or judged by the services who are tasked to support you, your child, and your family? 934 families took part in this survey, and 94% of them said they had felt judged and blamed. That is how This isn't just something that happens sometimes. This is almost, it's normal. It's endemic. And it is so wrong, because it's causing so much more damage. And quite frankly, the statutory services are tasked to support the most vulnerable families in our society. And instead of supporting and helping, it's completely wrong that they're making things harder, not easier. And that's what is happening every single day. And people often say to me, oh, well, we need to invest more in services. No, we don't, unless we get the basics right.
Definitely.
If we invest more in services, and that means that we can just pay more salaries of more people to cause more damage, then no, sorry, don't want it. Yeah. And to be honest with you, kindness, compassion, a smile, somebody saying to a parent, look, you are doing your best and you're amazing. That doesn't cost anything.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's priceless.
Definitely. I think that's why as well it can only help having like people like you, people that have experienced these sort of things firsthand, having them more in decision-making roles, because I think with people that maybe have learnt about it or have gone to school to learn about it, that's obviously good. You've got a good foundation of knowledge there, but there are just some things to deal with situations. There's some solutions that you can come out with if you've experienced it firsthand that you just never have heard of or experienced or know about. Yeah. If you have like a educational training in it, because like I've just been diagnosed with high functioning autism, and it's like, yes, I've read a lot about it, yes, I've seen a lot about it in the media and TV, but I know that from all my other things that I've got and I've dealt with through my life, that I will learn the like main bit about it from just experiencing it, through going through my life with it and just seeing what happens now moving forward.
But so can I say congratulations on your diagnosis? And please remember that just because you've been told that you're autistic now doesn't change who you are. You've always been autistic. And look at you, you've coped, you've got through, you've survived, you've had a pretty good life, actually, really, in a lot of ways. Definitely. So, now that you actually know that you're autistic, that's a huge plus, because you can start to understand perhaps why things happen, or why you might see things differently to your friends or your family and things. And the very fact of the matter is, if you can see things differently, that's a plus. If you have a problem, the more different perspectives, the more different if people can look at it sort of upside down, from this angle, from that angle, the more different ways of looking at it, the quicker that problem's going to get solved. And often we all want to live in an echo chamber where everybody around us has exactly the same views and thoughts and perspectives as we have. But you don't grow like that. You don't actually move forward. And you have got, you're on the very brink of adulthood. You're going to be 18 in a few months, aren't you?
Yeah, in February.
What a wonderful time to actually learn that you're autistic. That's fabulous. Well done. And also, it's very courageous of you to go public so quickly and to let people know.
So. I think it was just something that I started the podcast about wanting to share anything and everything, and just being as honest and open as possible, because for a long time, from the age of like 5, I had all of these different feelings, and I just couldn't relate wholly to one single person. And I knew that other kids would be in the same position as me, like I was all them years ago, and I could still not find anything, not necessarily a podcast, just literally any form of media that just answered that question, that was from a child's perspective of, why do I find things difficult? Why do I see things slightly different, and all stuff like that? And why am I not fitting into like societal norms? So I just wanted to kind of put all this information and all my difficulties and all my challenges out there, so that people could relate to it in maybe 1% of it, and hopefully that could help them along their journeys. That was the main goal behind this. So I just thought, as soon as I knew 100% that I did have Asperger's, I wanted to get it out there as soon as possible.
Brilliant. No, that's excellent. And also what you said has echoed an experience I had about 3 years ago. Malcolm and I did a pilot course about 3 or 4 years ago, and we had 10 children who were all autistic, and they came to the course with one parent each as well. So we had 10 children, and on that first day when they introduced themselves, what was really, it was very, very moving, but also quite sad, was it became very apparent that although each of these children knew that they were autistic, they'd never met anybody else who was autistic. And there was this just sense of like, oh, wow, are you autistic too? What, and you, and you? Wow, are we all autistic? And there was this kind of wonderful sense of, oh, goodness, it can't be that bad if we're all autistic type of thing. And it was, which was lovely, but it was also really sad because you got a sense that these children had actually must have spent, ever since their diagnosis, feeling like the odd one out, feeling that they weren't accepted. And to look around and to see that actually other kids that look completely normal are also autistic, you could actually watch those children's sense of self-confidence and self-esteem growing, which was lovely, but it was very sad that that hadn't happened or been enabled to happen years beforehand. And it's very difficult because schools and professionals have got a duty of care and confidentiality. So if a 10-year-old is diagnosed with ADHD or that they're told that they are autistic, a head teacher can't walk them around the school and say, oh, look, there's Harry, he is too, and there's Julie, and she is too, and all of that, because that would be breaching confidentiality. So everybody stays stum, and every child thinks they're the only one in their school that's got anything that's slightly different. Do you relate to that too?
I feel like completely. I feel like the science around it, though, also sets like a negative precedent around it, because I felt that quite a bit. I always felt like you had the normal kids, so to speak, and then you had like the SEN kids that were always grouped together and put in different groups and kind of off to the side. And I feel like with that whole like silence around like who's got this and who's got that, obviously it's not another person's decision to tell people who's got what and all sorts, but kind of that societal notion around like, oh, we can't talk about it sort of thing. When I was growing up, I always saw myself as different, and it's always hard to relate to other kids when you're constantly being told like negative things about yourself, like, oh, you're different in this way, or you're different in that way, and build that self-esteem that you were talking about. Because if you're being told constantly that like you're different and that you're like negative in this way, in whatever way you talk about it, it's just like you're not going to feel good about yourself. You're not going to feel able to go, oh yeah, I'll be a good friend to this person. Oh yeah, this person wants to talk to me. You just think, oh yeah, nobody wants to talk to me because I'm a different one. Do you know what I mean?
Shall I let you into a secret?
Yeah.
We're all different.
Yeah, I know.
Why aren't children told that at 6?
I know that would have helped a lot.
To be different. Do you know what I mean? Who wants to be the same as everybody else? You know,
100%.
Difference is a plus. It shouldn't be a negative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the way it's treated. I feel like, especially it's always. I feel like more nowadays it's becoming more in the media and stuff like that. But for a long time, it was this kind of negative thing that you were like, if you had anything, if you had autism or anything, that was like another thing on you going against you, sort of thing, and not this. Oh, you just see things in a different way. That's starting to emerge now. It was always, oh yeah, that's just another thing against you, sort of thing. So I think it's good that people are starting to open up and see things in a different way.
We are getting there. I mean, Toby is now 27, and I see a complete sea change in attitudes. And it's interesting because I think the vast majority of people, they might not always understand it, but most people nowadays actually want the best for anyone who's got any type of difference. We are beginning as a society to embrace, encourage, and actually celebrate difference in a lot of ways. We are getting there, but it will probably take another generation. So, you're about to become 18, so it's your job, Dad, to make it happen. You and thousands like you. But we are getting there. We really are. I hope so.
They're making great improvements, like the Paralympics. I'm seeing now with the advertisement and all sorts, and that's not just been physical disability. That's also been mental disability and all the stuff around that, and all the charities and stuff like that. But I also feel like it's kind of weird that it takes something like the Paralympics to roll around for TV channels and all stuff this to start advertising and stuff like that. I feel like it should be like a kind of a more normal thing, that it shouldn't be every 4 years that the Paralympics happens, that suddenly you go, oh yeah, you might want to help with your mental disability, or you might want to help with physical disability. It should just be an everyday thing that you just offer to help people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we are definitely getting there.
We are getting there. We have to keep believing that we're getting there and making it happen.
And then I just wanted to talk a little bit about your book, The Special Parents Handbook, and kind of why you decided to write that in the first place. And it's kind of the stuff that we've already talked about, but just maybe talk about that a little bit more.
Right, okay. One thing we haven't talked about as far as my own personal history is concerned is that at around the same time as Toby turned 18, I was diagnosed with bilateral breast cancer. And despite having all the treatment, chemo, surgery, radiotherapy, we got to the end of treatment and they did some scans just to make sure that the disease had been sort of sorted out. But it wasn't good news. And at that point, I was told, I'm really sorry, Mrs. Newbold, but the treatment hasn't worked and your cancer has progressed. And you're now stage 4 because it's in your bones as well as in your breasts. So basically, they were telling me at that moment that I had a terminal diagnosis. And of course, because of Toby, I needed to know the bottom line, how long did they think I had? And they don't like telling you that because obviously at that moment, everybody's in shock and they don't want to give you the really bad news as well. But once they understood that, I really did need to know because I would have to make some pretty fundamental and very difficult decisions about Toby's well-being. Basically, I was told at that stage that I probably had about 2 years to live if I was very lucky. If I stayed on treatment and if everything went really, really well, the most I could possibly expect to live would be another 2 years. And that day I knew I needed a bucket list. There was only one bucket list I could even think of that meant anything to me, which was Toby had just turned 18. I wanted to do whatever I could to help in some way the families like ours that were coming up behind us, the next generation of children and young people who had a disability, an additional need, or a medical condition. And I didn't know what I was going to do, but I wanted to do something. And I found myself compelled to write that book. It felt wrong for me to leave this planet without passing on all the difficult, really hard lessons that I'd learned. I just felt that if I wrote it all down and everything that we'd been through and all the solutions I'd found and all the things that had helped, if I could just put all of that in paper, one day, who knows, at some point way into the future, somebody just might pick up that book and it might help them in some way. What I didn't expect was for it to become an Amazon #1 bestseller and go completely bonkers. What I also didn't expect was when I was told that I had 2 years left to live, to still be alive and kicking 9 whole years later. So, and things have actually... Sorry?
You underestimate yourself too much.
Bless you. But basically the book then, it became incredibly popular. It was very honest, and at the end of every chapter there are tips, tricks and strategies so that if you're stuck you can sort of you might get a little bit of inspiration from some of the suggestions I put down. But as many healthcare professionals have read it as parents, which is brilliant as well. And because the book was so successful, that started opening other avenues, other doors. People were asking me, would I go and talk at this conference, or would I come and train this group of staff? So at the very time when I'm supposed to be putting my house in order and waiting for the Grim Reaper to come calling, and to be taking up maybe some sort of bucket list hobby like knitting or crochet, Malcolm was driving me all around the country, and I was talking on these huge stages, and I was on TV and on the radio. I mean, it went mad. And to be honest, 9 years later, it hasn't gone unmad yet. It's still crazy. And one thing that I'm incredibly proud of is that I'm now on lots of national strategy and policy groups. So I'm on the NHS Assembly. I'm also on the Leader Independent Advisory Group. I work with the Dynamic Support Register team. I work with lots of very high-level NHS, Department of Health and Social Care and government groups to actually try and make things better for our community. So I'm incredibly privileged, and it's a real honour to be able to do that sort of work, to be able to amplify the voices of us, Dan, our families, people like you, people like me, probably like people like who are hopefully going to be listening to this at some point as well.
I think the key word in all of that, though, is just honesty. I feel like there's a lot of help out there that's kind of generic and kind of watered down through people like the NHS not having to go at the NHS or anything. So I don't really think it helps to have like a first-hand personal kind of account and helpful tips, as you were saying, and kind of just help to get through it. That is just honest and just balls to the wall kind of thing. I think people really appreciate that, and I think that's why it blew up, because I think there was a real gap in the market for that. It was a real brave thing to do, and I think people appreciated that, and just just learn from it.
And you're doing the same with your podcast, aren't you? You're putting yourself out there every week. No. It will grow. It will get, So people, that's very honest too. That's brilliant.
I think that's pretty much it then. Is there anything you would like to add or talk about?
I would just like to say I've really enjoyed talking to you. It's been an absolute... Shall we tell them that I've actually known you since you were 6 years old, and your mum is one of my best friends? And I've watched Dan grow from the cutest little boy that ever there was into an absolutely astounding, amazing young man who I'm really proud of. And I just know that you're going to have, you're just going to go from strength to strength there, Dan. You're amazing. Absolutely amazing. You rock.
I really do appreciate that. I know that I can be so awkward with these, but hopefully that interview came across all right, and hopefully everybody enjoyed it, and you came up with some absolute gems there, and I can agree with what you were saying. So thank you for coming on. I think that's been great.
Thank you.
So if you did enjoy that, remember to share and download the episodes. I've got all of Yvonne's links down below. There's loads of them, so I can't list them off the top of my head right now. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed that. I thought it was a really good conversation. Obviously, as I said earlier, I've known Yvonne for ages. So yeah, it was really nice to finally just get some time to actually talk to her one-on-one and just ask her opinions about things, just talk over some stuff with her. And yeah, I thought after just getting my recent Asperger's diagnosis, she was the perfect person to talk to. But that's all from me. Hopefully I'll speak to you guys very, very soon. But for now, I'll see you later. Bye.